NUFC Talk TV. Today, what I'm going to be talking about is Premier League managers that we've had since the start of the Premier League. So, what I've done is I've got it down to 17. The stipulations I've put in place is they have to have been in the role for at least 8 games to get onto the list. There's one manager that is there twice, so that will be part of the show as well, but he will get 2 different ratings, and there will be very different ratings, believe me. What I'm going to do is start from the worst, work my way down. If I'm honest with you guys, the hardest part's been trying to sort out the top 7 weren't too bad. From that point onwards, we've had so many really poor managers that it's really hard to put them into any sort of position. And I know for a fact you guys are going to disagree with this, because I'm sitting looking at my list now and I'm disagreeing with myself, but I've had to make the decision, so I've done it, and I'm sure there'll be some discussion about whether I'm right or wrong. Just for the housework, if you can hit the like button, that would be great. If you're new around here, definitely subscribe. We've got new content coming out all the time now. The morning show, the breakfast show with Corey's brilliant. We've got Tim and Peter doing the early evening shows, and we've got obviously us guys on the late night. So Chris, Wynn, Gary, and myself. So really, there's a load of new content. So get on to get that out there. And if you can, please subscribe. Subscribe, but also become a member if you can as well. So let's get started on this list. And as I say, you are all going to disagree with us, I know, but we'll do as best as we can. So in 17th place, the worst manager I think we've had in the Premier League is Kenny Dalglish. I'll give what I'll do with each manager is give you the win rate they've had as well. So Kenny didn't have a bad win rate; it was 38%. However, it's what he did to that squad. We had a Premier League winning squad under Keegan in the early late 90s, and that guy just came in and destroyed it. He brought in old players. He got rid of our best players. And what I'm not going to use this to do is to talk through the players that we had when they were there. Otherwise, we'll be here all day. But he absolutely decimated a great squad. And I really can't think of anything positive he did apart from getting one to the cup final, which, if I'm honest, I think all that actually managed was to keep him in a job longer than he should have been. There's another manager who I'll come to, who we'll discuss, who should have really come in instead of him, but he just had nothing at Newcastle. He just was not a great manager, and he certainly wasn't but when you had the squad that Keegan had, he certainly wasn't the manager to come in and then try to develop or move on that squad, because he just had a complete and utter different mindset. So in my view, for destroying my, and I'll be honest, I'm slightly biased because the Keegan team was my favourite team of all time, but he absolutely destroyed the squad that I loved, so he's the worst for me. So we'll move on to 16th place, the best coach in the world, the best manager in the world, potentially in his own mind, John Carver, 15% win rate. I mean, he kept up, but he was awful as a manager. I mean, it was like, he just was not. He's a good number 2, I think. I think he is good at doing that. I think he's at Scotland at the minute, and he was good under Bobby Robson as a number 2. But I think sometimes when you look at number 2s, they're not always the right man to take over the main team, and there's a reason why they're behind. Sometimes it's good to be the voice of reason behind the scenes, or the man that stands slightly back. But I think you have to accept that, and when he came into role, it was just too much for him. I won't linger on the guy for too long, but for me, not a great manager whatsoever. 15th, and the one with the lowest percentage win rate, is Alan Shearer, 13%. Now, I know he's a club legend. I love the bloke. He scored the most amount of goals. As I say, he's a club legend. He was brilliant for as a player. As a manager, the only thing I can really say, it's like putting the kiddie in charge of the sweet shop. He didn't really have a clue. Bringing Ian Downey in as his number 2 seemed to be was the wrong decision. We got relegated. He alienated the players by the way he went on. He's as I say, a great footballer, but I think he's a particular example of why great footballers don't always make great managers, and he certainly wasn't a great manager. As I say, he'll never lose his legendary status at this club. And what I'm saying now, people will come back at us, I know, but for me, never a manager. And I think that's why he's never went into management again. I think he realised himself that it just wasn't his bag. Next person I'm going to choose is the late Joe Kinnear, number 14th, 22% win rate. I mean, to be fair to the guy, he was on a no-winner as soon as he came into the club. He was never, ever going to be good enough for win in regards to the fans' minds. He was never going to be good enough in regards to my mind. But he didn't help himself. Some of the press conference he did when he was on about, people being around Keegan being around the corner in a taxi, ready to come back, and calling players by the wrong names. And not only that, but were best players. So Kabai's, Nzobia, the winger, sorry, I forgot his name, but the winger, he just completely and utterly got the names wrong. And I mean, I'm not great at names, but as a manager, when you're managing people, you've got to be able to get Nzobia, that was his name. You've got to be able to get people's names right. And what he called them lads, and the way he went on, and I really don't know why he was ever brought in. Just a poor manager, poor appointment, and as I say, you could quite easily put him last. But as I said, that this list is a nightmare. The top half, and trying to get the managers in the right positions. So 13th is Steve McLaren. He was awful. 23% win rate. I don't know if you guys remember, but he set up when he came in. Ashley set up this sort of 4-pronged, committee of directors. So Steve McLaren was on that group. I believe it was Bob Moncur, the guy who was the director, who I can't remember his name, but also Graham Carr. So he had he had this group of people who he thought were going to run the club, and it was the worst time I remember. I mean, Steve McLaren just he again, probably a good number 2, but definitely not a manager. Really, really, really poor. I didn't like the guy. I don't like the guy now. Even when you see him on telly or anything, he was rubbish for England, rubbish for us. I just do not rate him as a manager. So we'll go on to 12th place now. In 12th place, I've got Ruud Gullit. He's got a 35% win rate. I think he came in, and I think what frustrated Ruud was players couldn't play the way he wanted. So I think he had sexy football was his thing, wasn't it? And I think he had an idea in his mind that he could set up a team to do that, and he would be the one that could develop them. But the problem is, if players aren't good enough, you've then got to adapt to their skills and what they can do. And Ruud couldn't do that. He was very much so, this is the way I want to play, and you guys have to step up and do it. And it didn't work. And it certainly didn't work at Newcastle. Again, I think part of his problem was that he came in after Kenny, who had destroyed the squad, and he had players that he was thinking, well, what do I do with these lads? I think if that man had the squad after Keegan, potentially would have done a better job, because you would have had more skillful players. I mean, we had loads of players that were coming to the end of the career that Kenny had insisted on buying, but Ruud had a bad hand of cards, but he played it badly as well. Upsetting Shearer, upsetting Ferguson. He just didn't have the man management needed with those sort of players, and it might have been slightly that he was too close to their age as well. Maybe he needed a little bit more age on him so that he could, have a little bit of respect from them. But I just don't think the players particularly respected him either, or agreed with the way he took the team. So poor manager in my view, Ruud Gullit. Then I'm going to move on to Sam Allardyce, who had a 33% win rate. Don't think I've got much to say about this guy. He's a traveller. He's a By traveller, I mean he's a traveller around clubs. He's managed how many Premier League clubs in his time? Um, he I think he thought he was a better manager than he was, which was his biggest flaw. He never got Newcastle United. He never got the philosophy behind it. In regards to, he had all these technical people, and he brought in this massive squad of men and women who he wanted to run the club with him. In regards to sports science and getting the best out of players, nutritionists, everything like that, which in the modern game is a massive thing. But it was too much. It was too much of a change and a culture change. He should have developed it slowly, and he didn't. And he's mad. His management of this team was rubbish. I think he took over at a time as well when he was the one that was here when the takeover took over from Ashley. And in regards to that, maybe if he'd had the original person who employed him, who believed in his philosophy, he could have developed. But once Ashley took over, I don't think there was ever a chance that he was going to stay. And the fans quickly turned on the guy, and I think that was probably right. He wasn't a great manager. Next one, and he's quite low down the list actually. In 10th is Steve Bruce at a 29% win rate. Again, the guy stood no chance at Newcastle. He had he came across as wanted to be a Geordie, but he wasn't. He was never a Geordie. He never lived in the area. He didn't have passion for the club. And to be honest, speaking now, I'm beginning to disagree with myself and putting him in 10th, but he was just awful. He was a terrible manager, really. And he lost, I think, a lot of fans' passion for the club just with his downright uselessness and unable to manage players or a team. He did have good players when he was there at times, and when Howe came in, I think he proved that some of the players he had were actually decent, but he was terrible as a manager, and I just think let him never cross the doors again. Again, I think most of them managers that I've spoke about above before now wouldn't be welcome back at Newcastle, apart from obviously Alan Shearer for his playing career, and I think John Carver, but the rest of them you would never want to see in St James's Park. Now in 9th, this might surprise some people, but it's Kevin Keegan, and this is based on his second time around at Newcastle. He had a 29% win rate, same as Bruce. He did kind of try to get things turned around. He did get the team playing better football, but the problem was you could see in him he didn't have the passion that he'd had the first time around. And I think the main reason for that was, as it transpired, he was never going to get the money he had the first time around. It became very apparent that Ashley wasn't willing to fund massive amounts of spending, and that's what Keegan needed. Keegan was a manager who needed players to come in and freshen things up. And as soon as the likes of Wise came in and players started coming in behind above his head, he didn't manage it. He couldn't manage it. So it's slightly not his fault, but in regards to what he did when he was here on that second spell, he kept up, but he wasn't the same guy. And that wasn't just down to him, that was down to the way the club was being run. But I think we'll have to be honest, he wasn't the same person that he was. The next choice on my list, so at number 8, is Graham Souness, who had a 45% win rate, which was kind of the reason why I put him this high up the list. But again, he came in at a time when discipline needed to be put into the squad, I agree. But in regards to that, he upset so many players, he upset the fans, he upset everybody. He was a disturber rather than a manager. He just disturbed the whole club. And I didn't like the bloke at all. I still don't now. Again, he's one of the ones that I've put high up simply down to his percentage win rate, but he wasn't a great manager. And I think the managers that I've talked about so far prove why we were as a club. We just were not getting the right people in at the right times. So we'd had sort of good managers who built up a squad, and then we just brought in dross, basically, people who weren't good enough to do the job after that person, and we'll put them in charge and we'll let them destroy our squads, which for a Premier League team is strange. And I know all teams do it, and all teams have manager rotation, but I think what you have to look at is as well, have any of those guys I've talked about so far gone on to do anything special? And I would say not. None of them really had careers after leaving Newcastle. I mean, Allardyce is maybe a bit of a standout one in regards to he got him going to England, but again, look what happened there. And then he just became a relegation specialist manager, trying to keep teams up. So, as I said, their managers, apart from Keegan, and I'll take Keegan out the equation on that one. Apart from Keegan, none of those managers excited me or were great guys. Now, they're moving on to top 7. Should be a little bit more positive here, which is strange for me. I know you think. So in 7, I've got Glenn Roeder with a 46% win rate. Great guy, great manager for us. Did a smashing job. He wasn't as charismatic as some people. He wasn't going to be the one that blew your frock up, in Gary's words, but he was a really good manager. Really got the town, understood what we wanted, and he was a calm, level head, which is different from some managers and not always what I want. But I really did like the guy, I just think he was the type of manager we needed for the period that we were in, and he just settled everything down and got everything ticking over. So top manager in my view, and it's a sad passing when he went, unfortunately, but lovely guy, and again, a great servant of the club as well over many a year. So absolutely nothing bad to say about Glenn Roeder. Chris Hughton is at number 6 with a 59% win rate. I think what we'll have to take into account there is a lot of them games were in the Championship. But again, he got we back up. Great guy, good manager. Obviously understood the game a lot and was a number 2 that could step up into that role. He got were promoted, good across the board. We actually had some really good wins in the Premier League under him as well. We were a bit up and down under him, but good guy. The problem with him was that he wasn't a big enough name, I don't think, to be Newcastle manager. And again, I'm counteracting myself in regards to the player, some of the managers I've spoke about who were big names and weren't good enough. And this guy obviously had the win rate and was doing well, so was good enough, but he just was never ever going to be top of the road Premier League manager. So the only thing that I can say about this guy with Houghton is I didn't disagree when they got rid of him, but they needed to bring a bigger name in than Pardew, who they did. To get rid of him, you should really have been bringing in a big manager, and they didn't. And I never really understood that. I don't think Houghton would have done much of a different job to Pardew. So, good guy, good manager, and as I say, I've got nothing bad to say about Chris Hughton. Rafa Benitez, good manager, 42% win rate, came in under difficult circumstances, got the fans behind it massively, and that was a big thing under Ashley, managing to get those fans the way they were with Benitez, or where we were with Benitez, was amazing. He really took control of the club, was the focal point, was the face of the club, did a great job. I've got nothing bad to say about me. We're relegated, but again, I think we were relegated anyway. Straight back up, and his football wasn't the greatest. It wasn't. We were never going to be ripping up trees under him, but he played a style that kept winning the Premier League, and that was all he could really do. He didn't have the money, he didn't have the backing of the board to be able to do anything else, and he could. To be fair to the guy, he could have stayed for year after year and just got the massive wages and stagnated in the league. but I think he realised that he was never going to get anywhere under us. The way Ashley was, there was just, we weren't going anywhere, and I think we all know that, and it was a really, really sad time. And thank God we are where we are now. So number 4 is Alan Pardew with 38%. I think Pardew's a bit like Marmite, love him or hate him. I sort of thought to myself, can I put him any lower down? I thought no, because he was a good manager for us. He did it. He was the one manager under Ashley who actually massively overachieved. He had to finish in 5th. He brought European football. He was a good manager. He had the issue with the head, but again, it showed a little bit of passion. It showed a little bit of, he seemed to get the area a little bit. And I know everybody will say he was only brought in because of the links he had with Ashley and things like that. But I just think he did a good job for the cards he was dealt. And he's probably the only manager on the list who left completely under his own steam. It was his choice to go, and he decided to go to a different club. So I think that proves a little bit of a point. I think he could, under Ashley, I don't think he would ever have been moved on. I think he would just have sat there and would have tootled along in the Premier League doing what we were doing. And at that point, that was all the club was set up to do, was to be and stay a Premier League club. Now down to 3rd place, Bobby Robson, true gentleman of the game, 47% win rate for. The only thing I would say with Bobby is we got him a couple of seasons too late. If he had took over from Keegan, I think we'd be living in a different world now as Newcastle fans. I think that with the squad Keegan had, Bobby would have developed that, and we would have been challenging. Is the understatement. I think we would have been Premier League champions. He would have developed a few young players into the squad, which he did, and he would have been able to sort of manage it a bit more as a experienced manager. I think we missed out on Bobby's best years. Great guy. When he came in, he did a magnificent job. Got with Champions League football again. Got with Champions League football. So I love Bobby to bits. I don't think we got the best out of Bobby. I don't think we got the best years out of him. I think if he had came here younger, we would have got a lot more out of Bobby Robson as a man and as a manager. And that's my only slight regret as a Newcastle fan, that he wasn't here earlier. As I say, if he came in, maybe, as I say, after Keegan, definitely, I think we'll be looking at a different Newcastle United these days. But great guy, great personality. I actually had the pleasure to meet the guy as well, and he was a true gentleman. He was signing books at the time, and I was sort of working in the shop where he was, and it got to the end of the signing session. I think he'd been there about 4 or 5 hours, and he had his PA next to him, and I had a quiet word. I said, well, we're going to close the queue because otherwise he's going to be here for hours more. And she went, no, don't do that. She went, he'll happily just sit and sign books. And I went, but he's going to be here forever. And she went, no. She went, he'll actually argue the other way. She went, make sure you keep that queue open. I think he was there for a good 2 or 3 hours over what he should have been. And he wasn't a young guy at the time. True gentleman of the sport, true gentleman in general life. And I think he's a great loss to the game. Second place, some of you might be surprised, is Eddie Howe. 50% win rate for Howe. And when you consider he took over a relegation-threatened team, that's really, really good. I don't think I need to argue a Howe's point for being second. He's a top-class manager. He brought with the cup. So for us, a cup success. Imagine being a young fan in this period, and you've seen Newcastle win a cup. Imagine being an older fan. Look at how emotional he got, and Wall did. we all got emotional, but you know, you've finally seen your club win something and be champions of something. It's amazing. As I say, good manager, done a great job. I'm not going to use this video for anything else. I will obviously put points across about him now in the live chats and things that we'll have. But for me, brilliant manager. He's done everything that you could ask him to do in regards to the club so far, and he's won with a trophy, which makes him amazing. And then at number one, don't think there'll be any surprise whatsoever with this one. 55% win rate, my boyhood hero, the guy that made us absolutely fall in love with football, the one and only Kevin Keegan. Forget about his second spell, forget about that. Just look back to those entertainers days. You know, he didn't only build a football club, he built up the passions of a city. Everybody around Newcastle was just in awe of the way the club were playing, the way we were bossing games, the way, you know, we're attacked every week. And he absolutely set up to be that, but he also did understand the city. He had open training. I remember going as a band to see open training sessions that he had. He just got everything about us, and he was a great guy, and still, I think, a hero. Well, he is still a hero in the area. I could wax lyrical about him all day. You know, you just got his passion, and I think, harking back to Eddie a little bit, I think that's the one thing I'd love to see from Eddie. And I know it's not his style, and I know it's not, but it's just that little bit of a passion and little bit of, you know, sometimes not coming out and saying what the media expect you to say, or doing a media interview perfectly, coming out and being passionate about your club and saying, you know, it wasn't good enough, or it wasn't this, or it wasn't that. And that's what Keegan was brilliant at. He got when he got the fans, he got the area, and obviously I love him to bits. As I say, he was my hero growing up, and nothing will ever change that. And I'm sure some of you guys will disagree. Some people will put Eddie there because he's won with a cup, and I can't disagree with you. But it's Keegan for me. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. And I think on the premise of what I've just said about Keegan, there's only one way could end this video. So to say thank you very much for watching, and I'd love it if you hit them like buttons. Love it.